Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at our first ever 2022 Senate Battleground map, and I'm going to identify the races that you should be watching this November. So we're going to get right into it, and we're going to be filling out states that are, I guess, safe for both parties. I'll characterize them all as just deep blue, like Washington would, on a normal prediction, be likely blue, but I'll be putting it as safe blue in this prediction, along with the states that I think the Democrats are going to win. Same with Colorado. Colorado would usually be likely, but it's not. It's to me, it's not a state that I think is going to end up being that competitive. We haven't seen the GOP making a play for it. They're likely going to run Ron Hanks, who is a subpar candidate, against Michael Bennet, who's a quite a strong incumbent for the Democratic Party. So I really would be surprised if the GOP even contest Colorado. Illinois, Maryland, New York, Connecticut, and Vermont. So those are all the seats that I think the Democrats are going to hold safely. For the GOP, you've got Alaska, Utah. Utah, there might be some contention between McMullen and Lee. We did see one poll that had McMullen within 4% of Lee, which is interesting if it's true, but I don't think it's true. I want to get more polling before I call Utah a battleground. So for now, it's red, but stay tuned on that. The Dakotas, Kansas, both races in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri. If Eric Gretton's got the nomination for the GOP, it could get dicey, but I still like the Democrats. I think they're going to play a bit of a smaller map in November. Like, let's just say Gretton's gets the nomination. I think that they are going to try to hold on to Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, obviously. New Hampshire, they might. I don't know how much the Republicans are going to try to beat Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire. My guess is they aren't going to. But if they do, the Democrats will put some money in there too. And they're going to try to flip Pennsylvania. So it's the big four, really, of Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, as well as Pennsylvania. And then you've got, other races the Democrats might put a little bit of an effort into, like Wisconsin, Ohio, or North Carolina, or maybe even Florida, although that I think Florida would be a really big stretch. But, and then maybe Utah even would come before Missouri if Gretton's were to get the nomination. So unless the Democrats really spread their money out, I don't see them getting, much of a play in Missouri, even if they get some good polling. Like, they'd have to get 5 or 6 good polls before they'd actually take it seriously, and I don't think that happens. So Iowa, obviously safe GOP, Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina. I think I'll put Florida there. Florida isn't even a mini battleground to me. It's just safe. Kentucky, Indiana. And, there are people who think Kentucky's going to be competitive because of Charles Booker. That, to me, is ridiculous. So, yes, this is kind of – these 8 races, I think, are some shade of battleground or mini battleground. So we're just going to do – so first we do the mini battlegrounds. So the first is Wisconsin. Wisconsin is not a – so it was a big battleground in 2020. It was a race that Joe Biden only won by, but I think 0.8%. It was very close, and, it could be close again. But when you look at the race, Ron Johnson seems to be running ahead of Mandela Barnes pretty significantly. Mandela Barnes is not a great candidate for the Democrats. I think he might do fine in Milwaukee, but I don't expect him to be flipping that many Trump voters in the rural or working class areas, and I think he'll run behind Biden by a significant amount in the suburbs, and I think he loses by, a bit more than Joe Biden. I think Wisconsin will go red by more than 5%, and to me, the Democrats might put a little money in the bank for Mandela Barnes, but I don't expect him to be doing much here, and I think that, when we get to October, when we get to Election Day, the consensus will be that the Republicans are going to hold Wisconsin, barring a big surprise. So I think Wisconsin will be a bit of a battleground, but I don't think it'll be that big. Now, I think Ohio is going to get a little more attention than Wisconsin. J.D. Vance seems to be running a much better campaign than Mandela Barnes, because Mandela Barnes is kind of running a, typical liberal campaign that would work well if he's running in a blue state, but, he doesn't seem to be trying to appeal to voters who are, who voted for Trump, because he needs to win a lot of Trump voters if he wants to be able to beat Ron Johnson, and I don't think he's doing that. Whereas Tim Ryan, on the other hand, is doing a very good job of it. Tim Ryan is, saying he sided with Trump on some things like the, trade deals. He even attacked Obama on one of his ads, which is very rare for a Democratic candidate. But when you're a Democrat in a state like Ohio, it's kind of have to do. And, there are, rumors, the polling we've seen that's public has Tim Ryan either beating, the latest poll had him beating J.D. Vance by 2%. I don't believe that. And then another poll had him down 2%. And, but every poll's had it pretty close. So, the polls make it look like a toss-up. I don't really think it's a toss-up, but I think the Democrats might, see what they can do here, run some internals, see if it's worth investing in. And I think they're going to give Ryan some money, but not as much as they might give other races. So Ohio, I think, will be a mini battleground. It'll be somewhat contested, but the GOP is definitely favored, and they will like barring something crazy. I don't think I'll move it down from likely Republican on election day. So that's Ohio. I think next is going to be North Carolina. North Carolina is a state where the Democrats have a good candidate in Sherry Beasley, but the Republicans also running Ted Budd, and Ted Budd is, I would consider him to be a good candidate. I think he's going to do very well. I think he will appeal to more suburbanites than Trump did. I think he'll outrun Trump in most of the counties that surround big cities. He'll probably do better. Well, he lost the primary in Mecklenburg County, but I think he'll do fine there, and I think he'll do very well in just the general urban areas compared to what Trump did. And I also think that he will be okay in the rural areas. There's no reason for rural voters not to come out for Ted Budd, and he's Trump endorsed from day one. He's been very Trumpy, but not too Trumpy. So I think that he's the ideal candidate for the North Carolina GOP. He's a good pick for Donald Trump, and I expect him to win this election by 5 to 6%, no matter how good of a candidate Sherry Beasley is. Next up, we've got not North Carolina, New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a state that I think could very well be, it could fall into the battleground. It's definitely the closest. I think Wisconsin isn't very close. So Wisconsin, it's closer to safe Republican than battleground. Then as for Ohio, I think Ohio is kind of a mini battleground. Same with North Carolina. I think these are typical mini battlegrounds. They're kind of the equivalents of like Kansas or South Carolina or maybe like Montana Senate 2020. They're contested, but we head into election day with a consensus that one party is going to win, and it's possible the other party win, but it would take a lot more than we think. So New Hampshire, I think, is kind of like that, but a bit toned down. It'd certainly be closer than these other three races. I think Maggie Hassan is someone who I could easily see losing, but a lot of things have to go right for the GOP, and they don't really, they haven't expressed that much willingness to try to flip her seat so far. Again, we don't know. It's still June. The primary hasn't been held yet, but I think right now New Hampshire doesn't look too great for the Republican Party. I'd be surprised if they flip it, but for now it's a mini battleground. Although again, stay tuned because I might move it into battleground once we get some more data there. So the remaining states are all battlegrounds, and I'll go through them one by one. So Nevada, I think, is definitely a battleground. Catherine Cortez Masto is going to be fighting a really tough battle for re-election against Adam Laxalt. I think Laxalt is someone who is a good candidate. He's non-controversial. I think he has some appeal to Trump voters, and I think he has a good amount of appeal to Republicans who might have been turned off by Trump's rhetoric, but are okay with voting GOP at the more local level. While it's not a local race, it's still a federal race. I think that Adam Laxalt can absolutely appeal to some Republicans. Now, that being said, Catherine Cortez Masto holds a high amount of name recognition in Nevada. She's someone who outran Hillary Clinton with, Hillary Clinton did quite well with Hispanics. She outran Hillary Clinton in a lot of areas of Las Vegas in her Senate run, and a lot of precincts she did better than Clinton. And, also she is someone who I think can actually do better than Biden with Hispanics, and especially with Hispanic women. And I think that the voters that came out for Trump in 2020 in Nevada were Hispanic. A lot of them were Hispanics without degrees that, might have stayed home and voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, and they voted for Trump in 2020. And I think that Catherine Cortez Masto can appeal to a lot of those voters, and I think she can get over some Trump voters who, Laxalt will probably flip some Biden voters from the suburbs, but I also think that Catherine Cortez Masto will win over some Trump voters, and I think that with turnout decrease in the rural areas, I think that Cortez Masto can still win, though it will be very close. Arizona's another, it's another close one. I think right now the GOP are probably narrow favorites, but again, that could change. Blake Masters is not a good candidate for them. He's someone who is, I think, very likely to turn off a lot of suburban moderates who are going to maybe even vote for Carrie Lake. Carrie Lake, I think, is better than Blake Masters, and she's still not that great of a candidate, but I think she's definitely favored over Katie Hobbs, whereas Masters and Kelly would have to get more data. But, in the polling we have, it's been pretty bad for Blake Masters. He's been losing by, often 20-something points in the polls we have, although, again, I think that I think those numbers are going to change by even next month. But Masters really just seems to me like he could bungle this race. He doesn't have that appeal. Similar to Trump. Trump didn't really have too much appeal to suburbanites in Maricopa County, and that's what matters if you're in Arizona. Mark Kelly's a good incumbent. He has a lot of money. He is someone who ran 2% ahead of Joe Biden, and I think him being incumbent this time will really help him out. So that elevates him. But the national partisanship is still really bad for the Democrats. Arizona state that I think is susceptible to a red shift in 2022. I think some Hispanics are going to not turn out for Kelly as much. I think that the suburbs will still trend a little bit towards the GOP, and I think that when you take a look at what we're seeing in Arizona, I really think that Mark Kelly's going to have a tough time getting reelected here, but it's still very much a battleground, but I guess that's a bit of a preview. Georgia is up next, and I think Georgia might be the most competitive race of the year with Herschel Walker and Rafael Warnock. At first it looked like Herschel Walker might run away with it. He was, I think I had in the lean GOP column for a bit, and in fairness, I think I think absolutely there was a chance for Herschel Walker to really run away with it, but it's not what's happening. Herschel Walker has had a lot of scandals, and it's only June. It's only, it's really only just uh, 5 months away from the election, and that is really not good for Herschel Walker. Like, imagine like candidates generally have a lot of inside information that they don't tell the public until later on. So imagine what Rafael Warnock's campaign is sitting on, waiting to release, on in September, in October, in November. I think that if it's only June, we're having this many scandals for Herschel Walker that the Warnock campaign didn't even leak, or maybe they leaked because they have a lot more to keep us entertained. I guess that's not a good look for Herschel Walker. And there were rumors back before the primary that McConnell didn't want Herschel Walker to get the nomination. The Senate Republicans were worried that Walker would bungle this race because of his brain problems and his inability to speak coherently. And I think that's a big issue. If they want to attack Joe Biden for being incompetent, it'll be harder for Herschel Walker to do that because he himself has some problems, I think, speaking coherently and speaking in a manner that inspires confidence. So Rafael Warnock right now, he's in a tough race. He's in a state that only they voted for Biden by very little. But again, Herschel Walker might just be the worst GOP Senate recruit of the cycle. So we'll have to see. But that's going to be a very, very tight race in Georgia that'll come down to the wire. So the last state is Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania was maybe at one point I would have called it a mini battleground, but I think when you look at what we're seeing out of Pennsylvania, the latest poll had John Fetterman up by 9%. I don't think he'll win by 9%. I think that poll was pretty, wasn't that great of a poll to begin with. But when you take a look at what we're seeing from Mehmet Oz's campaign, it doesn't look like it's being run well. I think that the GOP are just really in a position to bungle this rate. Like, again, they're still favored, and I think they're favored by a lean margin. But I think Mehmet Oz is not that great of a candidate. John Fetterman seems to be running a better campaign. This is coming from someone who thought Fetterman was going to blow this race. Like, again, I'm still not that confident about John Fetterman, but I think when you look at what he's done here, when you look at the numbers, when you look at Fetterman's candidate quality compared to Mehmet Oz, who doesn't even live in Pennsylvania, I think that is very hurtful to the Republicans in Pennsylvania. And considering Pennsylvania only voted for Biden by about a point, you'd think that it would be flipping towards the GOP or be tilting their direction heavily. But I'm actually I have it as leaning Republican, and most people have it as a toss up or leaning towards the Democrats because Fetterman seems to have the energy right now. But what I will say is that I think Biden winning Pennsylvania by 1 may seem like it's good for Republicans on the surface, but Biden was not that great of a performer in Pennsylvania. The guy who they're running for governor, Josh Shapiro, won statewide by 5% in 2020, and the Democrats in the House, they won Matt Cartwright won a Trump district, Susan Wild won a contested district, Chrissy Houlihan and Mary Gay Scanlon won contested districts, and Connor Lamb, back when he held his seat, won another competitive district. So I think the Democrats in Pennsylvania are in a position where the nationally, like Biden and Clinton, they didn't really do that well in Pennsylvania, but local Democrats, Senate Democrats, governors like Tom Wolf, they were able to win these races by double digits in some cases. Like Wolf won by 17, Casey won by 13, Josh Shapiro won by 5% in 2020, and so I think statewide or national Democrats are generally like the worst kind of their kind in Pennsylvania, whereas compared to their federal cousin state level Pennsylvania Democrats can do better. And I think Fetterman, if he can maximize that, get some Trump voters, which is what he's trying to do here from rural and working class areas, I think he can have a good chance of winning. But again, it's a red wave year. He's not. I think he will still run behind Biden in a lot of the Philly suburbs, and that really hurts him because the suburbs are pretty big. Pennsylvania, a lot of the reason that Biden won was because he did so well in the suburbs, and if Fetterman can't replicate that, it'll be tough for him. But yeah, so I think that is it for Pennsylvania, and that's it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Again, just to read it out here, the mini, there are 46 seats for both the Democrats and Republicans that are safe, and there are 8 seats that I think are going to be competitive. 4 of which are mini battleground, the other 4 of which are true battlegrounds. And so I think the closest 3 races out of the 4 battlegrounds are probably going to be, I'd say Georgia, then Nevada, then Arizona, and then Pennsylvania is a close 4th. But yeah, so thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.